like this one, but one where it doesn't work out to be 1-to-1? Like it doesn't work out to be perfect?
Yes. Perfect. Looks good. There's no marker here today. All right. So let's say we've got two countries, Japan and Indonesia. And the two goods we're producing are rice cakes and seaweed salads. So for Japan, they can produce either 3 rice cakes or 6 seaweed salads. Indonesia can do 2 rice cakes. Right. This problem is just opportunity cost and comparative advantage. It's not actually trading. Let's work through this, and then I'll do one that has everything. We do 2 rice cakes or 5 seaweed salads. So for Japan, the opportunity cost. The opportunity cost of producing 1 rice cake, so the opportunity cost for rice cake is 3 divided by 6, right? No. See, I don't think this is the right way to do it, but the way I always do it is I just do fraction divided by 3 so it equals 1, and then divide that by 3 so it equals 2. In order to make 1 rice cake, you have to give up 2 seaweed salads. Now for Japan, the opportunity cost for the salad is going to be the reverse of this. It's going to be 3 divided by 6, or 1/2. So how about for Indonesia? What's the opportunity cost to produce rice for Indonesia? What's that? Yes, it's the 5 divided by 2. So that's going to equal 5 over 2, or 2.5. And the opportunity cost of salad? Yeah, the 2 divided by 5. Or 0.4. So who's got the comparative advantage in producing rice?
Just a question. When you say like opportunity cost of rice, do you say that means like you're giving up 1 rice, or no, 2 salads for 1 rice?
That's right.
Okay.
So for rice, Japan has an opportunity cost of 2 salads. Indonesia has opportunity cost of 2.5 salads. So Japan has a comparative advantage. How do I write this? Comparative advantage for rice goes to Japan. So then the opportunity cost for the seaweed salad. We've got 1/2 or 0.5. Compare like things. 0.5 to 0.4. So who's got the lower opportunity cost? Indonesia, that's right. So comparative advantage for the salad, Indonesia. Let's abbreviate this, is too low. Because they have a lower opportunity cost. So For Japan, they have to give up 0.5 things of rice. And for Indonesia, they have to give up 0.4 things of rice in order to produce one. So because they have different comparative advantages, in this case, they can trade and make themselves both better off. Find a problem that has all of that. There we go. We'll do the Canada and the United States. So Canada and the US, they both produce maple syrup and honey, and they're sold for the same price. It's using the same amount of capital and labor, so these are all equivalent. So this is what US and Canada can both make. So Canada specializes in maple syrup. They can make 60 tons of syrup with no honey. They specialize in honey, they can make 40 with no maple syrup. US, if they specialize in maple syrup, can make 50 with no honey. If they specialize in honey, they can make 50 and no syrup. So who's got the comparative advantage, or who's got the, absolute advantage for honey? The US, literally just who can make more. And then Canada has absolute advantage in maple syrup. So they have 60, the US can only produce 50 if they specialize. So which country has the comparative advantage for honey? What's that?
US.
So this is what? US. So for honey to produce, you go from 0 tons to 10 tons. For Canada, they have to go 15 tons of maple syrup. So for 10 honey, they have to give up 15 of syrup. So obviously the opportunity cost, we want 1, so we'll divide this by 10, divide that by 10. So we end up with, divide by 10, 1.5. Now for the US, the opportunity cost of producing maple syrup, right? No, we're still on honey. With 10 more units of honey, you have to give up 10 units of maple syrup. That's going to be 10 divided by 10 equals 1. So because the US is a lower opportunity cost for producing honey, they're going to have the comparative advantage. Now for maple syrup, what's the opportunity cost for Canada for producing maple syrup? 10?
Because to get from 0 to 15, don't they have to lose 10?
That's right.
And
So 10, and then you have 15 maple syrup, you have to give up 10 honey. So to get this to 1, divide by 15, divide that by 15, we end up with 0.67. Everybody check your work. For the same country, for the different product, it's going to be the inverse. So then for the US, the maple syrup, so if we go from 0 to 10, and I always pick 0 to 10 because that's easiest, you don't have to do any math going this way. You can do 10 to 20. But from 0 to 10, they have to give up 10 tons of honey. 10 divided by 10 is 1. So who's got the comparative advantage here? Canada, because they have a lower opportunity cost. Of course, that'd be too easy. So now, suppose Canada's producing 30 tons of honey and 15 tons of maple syrup. The US is doing 10 tons of honey and 40 tons of maple syrup. So basically, what we've got right here. If they specialize in trade, can both countries make themselves better off? So to do that, each specializes in what they have a comparative advantage at. So Canada focuses on maple syrup, and the US focuses on honey. So if the US focuses on honey, they can make 50 tons. So the US can do 50 tons of honey, and they can do 0 of maple syrup. Canada will focus on maple syrup because that's what they have the comparative advantage in. So the 0 honey and 60 maple syrup. So now they offer a trade. Trying to find where they say it in the question. Okay, yeah. US trades 30 tons of honey to Canada for 40 tons of maple syrup. So the trade, 30 honey for 40 maple syrup. So US gives up 30 honey, so they go from 50 to 20. And Canada has 30. And Canada gives up 40 maple syrup. So the US ends up with 40 maple syrup and 20 Canada ends up with 20 maple syrup. Yeah. Which is what we see here after trade. That's how you calculate the after trade part. So, how much is the US made better? And how much is Canada made better? Yeah, so you can actually see it. So initially Canada had 30 tons of honey. After trade, they have 30 tons of honey. Before trade, they had 15 tons of maple syrup. Now they have 20 tons of maple syrup. So now they have 5 more tons of maple syrup than they did initially. The US originally had 10 tons of honey and 40 tons of maple syrup. After trade, they have 20 tons of honey and 40 tons of maple syrup. So they're no better for maple syrup, but they have 10 more tons of honey. And there's your answer.
Thank you.
All right, do you guys have any other questions from the review sheet? So the exam is going to be 25 multiple choice questions, and then 5 short answer questions, and then 2 extra credit questions. You can have a calculator, but it has to be like a simple one. You can't come in with like one of those graphing calculators you can like write in and stuff, just because like you won't need that.
Could one short answer be like working through one of these problems?
Yeah, so you will have a problem like one of these on the exam. And I'm going to give you, okay, let's switch back to DocCam. So I would give you all of this. I would give you this half here, and I would tell you what the trade's going to be. So then you would calculate the opportunity cost, figure out who has the comparative advantage, have them each produce, like specialize in the one they're good at, and then trade with the numbers I give you for the trade, and see how much better off they're made. The one I included on here towards the end, yeah, about UK and Norway, the fish oils, they end up with the same opportunity cost. I was going to go over that in class. We just ran out of time on Wednesday to show that when countries have the same opportunity costs, neither has comparative advantage, so it doesn't make sense to trade. So you work through that and they actually end up trading. They start out for the trade. UK makes 4 and 4. Norway makes 2 and 2. If they both specialize, UK makes 8 oil and 0 fish oil. Norway makes 0 oil and 4 fish oil. They have to trade at 2 to 2 because the opportunity cost for both of them is at 1. So if they trade at 2 to 2, UK ends up with 6 oil, 2 fish oil. Well, they can do that without trading. Norway ends up at 2 to 2. And they can do that without trading. So really, there's no reason to trade if you can't make yourself better off. UK could just, if they wanted to get 6 oil and 2 fish oil, they could just make it themselves and not trade, instead of making something else they don't want and then trading later. So it just illustrates trade. While it usually makes both parties better off, if you don't have that comparative advantage, then you're not going to be better off from trade. All right, so why should Martha Stewart not do her own laundry, even if she's the best at doing laundry?
The opportunity cost of time, she's not making money, a lot more money than she could be making.
Yeah, she can make a ton of money running her TV show and her company, her insider trading. As a joke, she went to jail for insider trading. She can make a lot more money doing that, so I think it's a waste of her time. You can make so much more money doing something else, just pay someone a small amount of money it takes to do your laundry for you.
Who's the chubby, like blonde, like cook person? No, no, it's a girl that got in trouble too. You know, she likes butter.
Oh, Paula Deen.
Yeah. What happened to her?
I think she said some like,
Bad words.
yeah.
Ah. Just curious. Continue.
I haven't seen her in a while. That would explain it.
I have a question for
Yeah.
you. So would it allow for both her and the person she's paying to have a comparative advantage, like they're both better off, like what's that?
Yeah, so because the person she would pay to do her laundry, it's relatively less costly for them to do the laundry compared to other things they're skilled at. The other things they're skilled at don't bring in as much money as Martha Stewart running a company. So it's the same basic idea of like these two countries having different opportunity costs, just two different people with different opportunity costs.
So I said it's also a comparative advantage because you can pay someone to give the laundry done and they'll go through that role. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So for that, like last question about Martha Stewart, we don't really have to like use any math, right? It's just like.
Yeah, there's no math. It's just like the concept of she's more productive, so it's a higher opportunity cost for her.
Okay.
You can always make up numbers and pretend to do math, but that's more work than it's worth, probably.
So then, for the comparative advantage, does Martha Stewart have the comparative advantage over, like, I don't get that.
Okay, so she has an absolute advantage in both things, in running a company and like doing laundry.
Okay.
But she has a comparative advantage only in running the company. Because the opportunity cost of doing that laundry is ridiculously high.
Okay.
It's like that joke that it's pretty old now because it's oh my God, who's the guy who's going to implant the microchips in us in the vaccines for COVID? Bill Gates, thank you. So much easier to remember the weird conspiracy theories than his name. But yeah, Bill Gates, if he was walking down the street and he saw a $100 bill laying on the ground, it wouldn't be worth it for him to stop because he's worth so much money. Like each second of time is worth like $1,000.
There's a
So
website where you can actually like spend your money and see how much you get. Yeah.
that's crazy. Surprised they don't have that with like visas yet. All right. Most of this stuff we covered like in the chapter. Yeah, so how do incentives affect individuals' actions?
They drive human action, and if the cost of something increases, then they're less likely to do it, and the cost of something decreases, then more likely to do it.
Yeah. That's a basic idea. So no matter whether it's like in a market setting or just like how people act, if you increase the cost of something, people are going to do less of it. Like the example I gave, like voting. When it rains on voting day, like fewer people vote because it's a hassle. I needed to go grocery shopping the other day, but it was like pouring when I left work. I said, the hell with that, and just went straight home. Relative cost of going to the grocery store for me increased because it was raining.
And then perfect information is optimal for market participants, correct?
It's not optimal.
It's not.
No, because it's too costly to attain,
Okay.
to get like all the information possible. So we have to deal with getting like half of the information we need, or like a partial information. We try to reach decisions based on that.
Thank you.
And that was like the Guy Fieri example. Like we can't tell the best restaurant in the country because we'd have to go around to like every single one. But it's pretty easy to find out which ones are good or bad in an area.
There are three types of economic systems. Is it like the market economy, centrally planned, that stuff?
Yeah, and next.
Okay. And then like, are we gonna have to say like, what goods and services are produced? Like, I'll answer all those questions for each system.
Just generally know like half a sentence for each one.
Okay.
Very simple, like centrally planned economy, like the government dictates, government decides what to produce and how. Market economy, they use prices and participants, like so firms and consumers, figure out what and how, and mix to some each. Okay, so if the production possibilities frontier shifts outwards, what does that mean?
indicates an expansion in the economy.
Yeah, so economic growth. So you've got two goods. It's good one and good two. Too lazy for an example. Here's the production possibility frontier. So it's a trade-off between this good and this good. So we try to be somewhere on that line. If it shifts out like that, at any point, we can be having more of both. So that represents economic growth. The society becoming richer, becoming more well off, because we can now end up with more, I don't know, whatever those two goods are. Why are some of the reasons that this happens? Can you guys tell me?
Increase in resources.
Increase in resources. So we could find new natural resources. We could get them cheaper from somewhere else so we can afford to buy more. We can have more people. People are also resources because they're labor that goes into producing these goods. We can have an improvement in technology. So now we're more productive with what we're actually making, or we're able to make more things. And then like an increase in productivity. So the workers we have, the same number of workers, they're now able to make more because maybe they're more skilled, like they got more educated. They learned how to use Excel, or they learned how to open PDFs, like all the boomers, like you have to help do their basic functions. That was actually one of my theories in grad school. They asked why productivity growth has been so low for the past like 20 or so years. It's lower than it had tended to be with the past like previous 5-6 decades. And I blamed it on baby boomers. I think of my dad using an Excel spreadsheet that doesn't know how it works. And like my mom will yell and she's like, no, just like use a formula, don't type it all in yourself and you don't have to do it later. No idea what she's talking about. Think of all the time wasted for old people that don't know how to open their emails. Let's say there's two countries. We'll say these are capital goods used in investment, and these are consumer goods. One country's there, one country's there. In the long run, so let's just say like 10, 20 years later, which country is going to be better off? Whose production possibly frontier is going to move out further? A, because they're focusing more on capital goods. So maybe A will be like here, and B will be like here. They're consuming more in the short run. More of their resources are going to things that consumers are going to use, rather than things that can be used to produce goods. That's going to help economic growth in the long run. A lot of times people related to politics, or when they're talking about like politics, will say like we need to encourage consumer spending. That's going to help the economy. They said that after like 9/11, during the financial crisis. We encourage people to go and spend. It'll help the economy, and it will in the short run help increase GDP. Like it will help, I don't know, more jobs. But in the long run, it's going to cause lower long run growth because you're focusing more on consumption than on spending. Let's go back to just the one curve. Where all can a country be on that production possibility frontier?
Anywhere along the line.
It can be anywhere along the line, so like this point, that point if they wanted.
Yeah, and anywhere to the left or right.
Yeah, they can also be in here. So they can be here, there. I'll erase these, that's just confusing. There. Those points are inefficient. You don't want to be there because there you're just wasting resources, like leaving them on the table. But it's still possible to be there. If this is your production possibility frontier, it's impossible to be out here. You need growth to get there in the next period, but in the current period, you can't produce out there. But how could you get out there in the current period? Put different concepts together.
Economic growth.
In this period.
Oh.
Trading?
Trade. Trade is someone who has a comparative advantage at something else. You get out here through trade. What's the law of diminishing marginal benefits? A lot of these are just like definitions, but
It's like the idea that like the next one makes you less happy.
yeah, exactly. So like if you're eating pizza, that first slice is awesome. The 10th slice, you're like super full and bloated. The more you can consume of something or the more you use a resource, the less and less valuable it's going to be. Another example is like for companies and production, for labor, if you hire more people, initially it's going to increase productivity. It's going to be great, but as time goes on, you know the saying, too many cooks in the kitchen. Each additional person is adding less and less, and eventually, because there's so little for them to do, they end up just like joking around, messing around, talking. They're actually becoming less productive. They're adding people you don't need that actually can't help out, and they're just distracting others.
Why does comparative advantage determine trade? Like, what's a short reason for that?
Why does it? Okay.
Instead of question.
That goes back basically to the Martha Stewart example. That just because you're better at producing something, so you have the absolute advantage, doesn't mean that you can make yourself better off by doing that. It goes back to the opportunity cost idea. That the opportunity cost of producing something can be so high that it makes more sense to trade. All right, what's the function of profit and loss in an economy? What's the function of profit and loss in an economy? Yeah, go ahead. I didn't know your hand was up, sorry.
Isn't that like what like determines like what products companies are making money off of them? So like other companies know that like with the white claws and stuff, they know like they can make profit off that, so that they should do it.
Yeah, so it's like a signal to the firm that's making it that like you're doing a good job. This is what people want because they keep buying it. And then for other firms, it's a sign, it's a signal, and an incentive encouraging them to switch to that product to try to meet that need. Exactly. And because firms face a hard budget constraint, that loss is a very strong incentive for them. So they'll end up very quickly realizing like something's wrong. So the cool thing is that it shows what's going on. It like gives you that information, not just the firm themselves, but like their competitors. And then it encourages them to act. So profit encourages them and loss pretty much forces them to do something else to do it better. So the economy ends up with a better combination, better usage of these resources, what makes them better off and meets people's needs. Oh, sorry.
Talk about the production possibilities.
Let's see, what was the question for that? What question, like the definition, like what is it?
Yeah, there's like 3 questions on here about it, I just don't remember very well, like what example we used for it.
Yeah, so I'll give you the definition. The first one, I had to write this down because I don't have it memorized, like word for word. It's a curve showing the maximum attainable combinations of 2 goods that can be produced with the available technology. So basically, we're showing the opportunity cost between 2 goods. So if you move along the frontier, it highlights the opportunity cost of moving, say in this case, from capital goods at this point to down here, like how many capital goods you have to give up to produce more of the consumer goods. So it's displaying that relationship. You can pick any 2 products in an economy. You can boil it down. Like I've used capital goods and consumer goods. You can use like housing and consumer goods. You can just pick 2. So any of the examples like oil and fish oil. It was a simple model just to highlight like opportunity costs.
Can you talk about the question about that, like addressing Jim's beginning?
Oh, yes. So we talked about positive and normative economics. I don't think I mentioned his name in this class.
Okay.
So I don't think it's going to say, I'm 99% sure his name's not on the exam. I'll double check that. But positive analysis, positive economics is what's called a means-ends framework. But basically it's just describing the process of what's happening. So it's how does a change in one thing lead to a change in something else, like a cause and effect kind of relationship. And normative economics or normative analysis in general is deciding what ought to be. So is this change desirable or is this effect desirable? So if you increase the money supply, you end up with more inflation. That's positive analysis, is like how it happens. And normative analysis would be that is bad because, and then like you argue like the reasons. So positive is like more objective, and normative is more opinion-based. We'll do mostly positive analysis in this class, but every now and then we'll have like some normative stuff. Okay, what does the assumption of rationality mean for economics? But does it mean that people are always right? No, it means people act in what they see as their own like self-interest. So it's what they think is going to be right. So they act with what they think is going to be the lowest cost and with the greatest benefit to them. You don't purposely choose the thing that's going to second best satisfy your needs. You try to do what best satisfies your needs. Now you can obviously be wrong about this. And that does not mean that like, I don't know, like your emotions don't come into play, that you're just like a robot calculating things. It's just that you do what you think is best. And based on, I don't know, who you are as a person, your wants, your needs, what you think is best may be different from other people, and it may change over time. But in that moment, you think it's what's best.
Is this test going to be on campus or on paper?
It's going to be on paper in here.
I just want to make sure that can you just go over the assumption of economics?
Yeah, so the first is methodological individualism, which is I don't know, it's a mouthful. But basically what it means is we're studying like individual action. I wanted to highlight that because this class is like intro to macro. So we talk a lot about like countries trading and like, I don't know, GDP in a country. But when we're We want to remember that these are all people acting, and they're all acting, in their own self-interest. And it's driven by people. It's not driven by like large groups of people. Even though it's easier to do analysis just like aggregating them, like large groups. The next is purposeful action. So like when we act, we do so like intentionally. Like we have goals. They might not always be the best goals, but we have them. And the last is economizing behavior. And in that comes rationality, where we try to do what's best for ourselves given the cost. You guys have any questions? There's like 5 minutes left. Any questions about like the form of the test or anything on Monday that I forgot to tell you about?
Can you post like the review key, but like only for math questions?
Post the what?
Like a review key, like your answers.
Oh, the answers. Oh, yeah, of course.
Sorry.
I don't know why I didn't understand what key meant. It's pretty simple. Yeah, I'll post the answers and like a more well written out like math answer. And I'll post one for like one of these problems as well, because there's no trade in the one that ended up on there.
When do you think that'll be?
Yeah.
You'll have that posted?
Oh, I have a phone call from like 1 to I think like 1:30, so I'll try to get it up by like 2 or 3.